Welcome to the deep dive. We are tackling one of those really critical and, let's be honest, often nerve-wracking parts of managing people, handling employee performance issues.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're focusing on that formal step, issuing written warnings.
It's definitely a big moment. It feels, well, significant because it is. It's needed sometimes to correct behavior, but gosh, you have to get the details just right.
Absolutely. And our guide for this deep dive is a recent piece from the Unit Consulting. They're an HR consulting firm right here in Texas.
That's right. And they specialize in exactly this sort of thing, helping Texas businesses navigate these HR complexities.
Yeah.
Issuing warnings is definitely one of them.
Exactly. So their guide, it's like a roadmap, but also maybe a bit of a warning sign itself. It lays out the best ways to do it, and importantly, the common mistakes, the pitfalls for employers here in Texas.
Yeah.
So our mission today, let's unpack this guide, get into the nitty-gritty beyond just the bullet points, and pull out the real practical wisdom.
Because it's crucial. The guide makes it really clear. Do it right, and a written warning is fair. It's effective. Do it wrong. Well, it can blow up. You're looking at potential legal risks, and you can just destroy trust within your team way faster than you might think.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this then.
What's really interesting from the guide is how it breaks down the purpose of a proper written warning. It's actually doing several jobs at once.
More than just like creating a paper trail for HR.
Oh, definitely more. I mean, yes, the one everyone thinks of first is legal protection. That's huge. A clear, well-documented written warning is your sort of frontline defense.
Defense against what specifically?
Against claims down the line. Things like wrongful termination, discrimination claims, maybe unfair treatment allegations. If things unfortunately escalate, maybe even to termination, that documented warning, it's absolutely vital evidence for the business.
So it's not just having any document, it's having the right document, one that's solid.
Precisely. It needs to be defensible. But, the guide stresses it's not only about protecting the company. Second, it's designed to improve employee performance.
Right, the corrective aspect.
Exactly. A well-written warning clearly explains the problem and, crucially, outlines how the employee can fix it. It should give specific paths for improvement. So it's corrective, yes, but also developmental, ideally. It gives the employee a real chance to turn things around.
That makes sense. I mean, if you don't really understand what's wrong or how to make it right, you're kind of set up to fail, aren't you?
Exactly. And the third purpose the guide highlights is workplace fairness. When you use warnings consistently for similar issues across the board,
People notice that.
they absolutely do. Consistency builds this foundation of fairness, predictability, and that in turn helps build trust between employees and management. Lack of consistency does the opposite.
Okay, so protecting the business, helping the employee improve, and building fairness. Wow, that's actually a pretty heavy lift for what seems like just one conversation and a piece of paper.
It really is.
Okay, let's dive into the how-to then, based on the Unit Consulting's guide. This is where it gets really practical. They lay out 7 core best practices.
Right, this is the actionable stuff. Following these can make the difference between a warning that just checks a box and one that's actually effective and, importantly, legally sound.
First up, the guide says you absolutely must clearly define the issue and expectations.
This is like the foundation, vague language. It's your enemy here. It confuses the employee and it can be legally problematic. The guide gives a great example. Don't just write poor attitude.
Right, what does that even mean?
Exactly. Instead, be specific about the behavior, like refusing to cooperate with team members during the XYZ project meetings on May 27th and 28th. See the difference.
Yeah, it goes from subjective judgment attitude to something objective and observable, refusing to cooperate. Much clearer.
Precisely. And then building on that, the guide says you need to clearly spell out what improvement actually looks like. Make it measurable if you can.
So not just improve cooperation.
No, maybe something like actively participate in team discussions by contributing at least one relevant point per meeting, or complete your assigned collaborative tasks by the agreed-upon deadline, or even respond to team emails within 24 business hours. You give them a clear target.
Got it. Specific issue, specific measurable improvement goal. Okay, second best practice. Include specific examples and dates.
Yes. Details, 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 dates, times, maybe locations, who was involved or witnessed it, if that's relevant.
Seems like a lot of work.
It might feel like it, but it anchors the warning in reality. Think about it. Trying to argue with, on June 1st at 10 a.m. in the conference room, you stated X to Sarah versus just, you're often disrespectful.
Big difference. It makes it much harder to deny or misunderstand.
Exactly. And it communicates the seriousness more effectively than just generalizations. It shows you've actually tracked the issue.
Okay, practice number 3. Outline consequences and next steps. The employee needs to know what happens next.
Absolutely. No ambiguity. Clearly state what could happen if the performance or behavior doesn't improve. That might include further disciplinary action, potentially leading up to termination. But the guide also emphasizes the path forward. Outline the specific steps the employee needs to take. Set a clear timeline, maybe improvement expected within the next 30 days. And crucially, schedule follow-up meetings or reviews to check on progress.
So it's clear. Here's the problem, here's how to fix it, here's the deadline, and here's what's at stake if you don't.
It combines accountability with a structured chance to improve.
Precisely. That clarity is key. Okay, number 4, communicate privately and professionally.
This feels like Management 101, but I bet it gets messed up easily.
You'd be surprised. The guide specifically calls out delivering warnings in public or even semi-public spaces. That's just demeaning. Privacy protects the employee's dignity.
And the delivery style matters too, I assume. Immensely. The guide stresses keeping a calm, professional, factual tone. No anger, no accusations, no emotion getting in the way. Focus on the documented behavior, the performance standards, not on making it personal. Delivering it professionally helps the employee actually hear the feedback, even if it's difficult.
Good point. If someone feels attacked, they just shut down. Okay, number 5 is document thoroughly and immediately.
Get it all down on paper or electronically, whatever your system is, right after the conversation happens. Don't wait.
Why the rush? Does waiting a day or two really matter?
Oh, it absolutely does. Documenting immediately means the details are fresh, accurate, you capture nuances you might forget later, and these records, they are your proof if questions come up later. The guide explicitly calls out lack of documentation or delayed, fuzzy documentation as a major pitfall. It seriously weakens your position in any kind of dispute or legal challenge.
Okay, so prompt, detailed documentation, absolutely non-negotiable. Practice number 6, consistency is key.
Yes, and this ties right back into compliance, which is so important for Texas employers. You have to apply discipline consistently across all employees for similar types of issues.
Inconsistency just seems like it would breed resentment, right? Bad morale.
Worse than bad morale. It's a direct line to potential legal trouble, especially discrimination claims. Imagine disciplining employee A severely for something, but employee B, maybe someone of a different gender or race or age group, gets a slap on the wrist for the same thing.
Big red flag.
Huge red flag. That opens you up to claims under Title VII, the Texas Labor Code, you name it. Avoiding any perception of favoritism or discrimination is absolutely vital.
So treating similar situations similarly isn't just good management, it's a legal necessity. Got it. And the final best practice, number 7, follow up and provide support.
Right. This is something the guide really emphasizes, and I think it's often overlooked. The warning conversation isn't the end of the process. It's really the start of a focused remediation period.
So check-ins are important.
Very. Regular follow-ups show you're serious, yes, but also that you're genuinely invested in helping the employee succeed. It reinforces the message, but it also provides a chance to offer support, answer questions, maybe point them to resources.
You know, that's interesting. That follow-up could really change how the employee sees the whole thing. Maybe less like punishment and more like, okay, they're serious, but they're also trying to help me get back on track.
Exactly. It can shift the dynamic from purely disciplinary to something more developmental, potentially motivating genuine change rather than just compliance out of fear.
Okay, those are the 7 best practices.
Yeah.
But the UNIT Consulting's guide also talks about the flip side, the common pitfalls, the mistakes managers make.
Yes, and avoiding these is just as critical as following the best practices if you want the process to be effective and legally sound.
So what are the biggest traps people fall into?
Well, first, and we mentioned it, but it's worth hammering home as a pitfall, vague or ambiguous language. It's just so common.
Back to the poor attitude example.
Exactly. If the warning isn't specific, the employee genuinely might not understand what the core problem is or, crucially, what they need to do differently. You can't hit a target you can't even see clearly. Leads to frustration, not improvement.
Right. Okay, what else?
Second pitfall, emotional delivery. Delivering that warning when you're visibly angry, frustrated, maybe raising your voice, it's almost always counterproductive.
Yeah, shuts down the conversation immediately.
Totally. The employee goes on the defensive.
Mm-hmm.
They can't really hear or process the actual feedback about their performance or behavior. Calm and factual is the only way to go.
Makes total sense. What's number 3?
Third pitfall, lack of documentation. We talked about the importance of doing it, so naturally failing to do it is a huge risk. Inadequate records or no records at all, you have no evidence if there's a dispute later. It just becomes your word against theirs.
Your proof evaporates. Legally, it's like the warning barely happened.
Precisely. And the final major pitfall the guide mentions is failure to follow through. Meaning, you issue the warning, you outline consequences and next steps, and then nothing. You don't monitor their progress, you don't hold those follow-up meetings, you don't enact the consequences if things don't improve, or maybe you don't acknowledge improvement if it happens.
Ah, okay, so it just makes the whole warning seem pointless.
Completely undermines its credibility. If management doesn't hold employees accountable to the standards set in the warning, then the warning itself becomes meaningless, not just to that employee, but probably to others who notice too.
So you have to enforce the expectations you set out. It's about holding everyone accountable, including management, to follow their own process.
Exactly right. Now, while these ideas are generally good HR practice anywhere, the Unit Consulting's guide really tailors this for Texas employers. There are specific compliance things to keep in mind here.
What's particularly relevant for Texas businesses?
Well, you need to be compliant with both federal laws, like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, and state laws, specifically the Texas Labor Code. And both of those heavily regulate employment practices, including discipline, to prevent discrimination.
So that consistency point we discussed, it's not just good practice, it's legally mandated regarding non-discrimination.
Yeah.
Across all those protected categories, right? Race, gender, age, religion, disability.
All of them. National origin, etc. The guide really stresses you must treat employees uniformly in disciplinary matters, regardless of these protected characteristics. Unequal treatment is a huge legal risk.
And does the guide point to where employers can get more info on these laws?
Yes, it does. It mentions that valuable resources are available from the Texas Workforce Commission, the TWC, and also the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. They offer guidance, FAQs, sometimes even helpful templates for employers trying to navigate this correctly.
Okay, so putting this all together, it's clear that handling performance issues and issuing warnings effectively, it's not simple. It takes real precision, close attention to detail, that unwavering consistency we talked about, and a solid grasp of the legal side. It sounds pretty complex, especially if you're a smaller business, maybe without a dedicated HR department.
It really is complex. It's one of those things that seems straightforward on the surface, but when you're actually in it, dealing with specific employee situations, reactions, and knowing you need documentation that will stand up if challenged, well, it gets tricky fast.
And that's exactly why the Unit Consulting, who wrote this guide, mentions that they specialize in these very areas: performance management, disciplinary processes, crafting effective warnings. They offer comprehensive support for businesses facing these challenges.
Right. Their team has experienced HR professionals who really understand the Texas legal environment. They can help businesses draft compliant documents, guide them through difficult conversations, and generally make sure the process is handled correctly, protecting the business while being fair to the employee.
So, yeah, issuing an effective written warning really is a balancing act. You need that clear communication, the careful documentation, that rock-solid consistency, and you have to navigate all those legal requirements.
Fundamentally, it comes down to being fair and clear with your employee while also making sure the business is protected from unnecessary risks. It's not just paperwork. It's actually quite strategic when done right.
And the guide points out, if navigating all this feels, well, maybe a bit daunting, especially for Texas business owners or managers juggling a million things.
Which it often does.
The Unit Consulting is there specifically to provide that kind of tailored HR support and expertise.
Exactly. They actually invite businesses to reach out to them directly for help. If you want assistance building better, more compliant, and just more effective performance management processes, you can contact the Unit Consulting.
And they provide their number right in the guide. You can reach the Unit Consulting at 956-230-6866.
That number again is 956-230-6866.
They're specifically focused on helping Texas businesses get this kind of HR challenge right. Great. Okay, as we wrap up, maybe a final thought for our listeners based on this guide.
Yeah, here's something to maybe chew on. What if you shifted how you think about written warnings? instead of seeing them primarily as, a punishment or just a bureaucratic step you have to take.
Okay.
What if you viewed it more as a structured, documented opportunity? An opportunity for a really honest conversation, backed by support, aimed squarely at helping that employee succeed and get back on the right track. How might reframing it like that change the conversation, the process, and maybe even the outcome for everyone involved?